Hey everyone, it's Chris here, back again from Pharmacare Regenerative Health and Fitness, today to share a lower body dumbbell workout you can perform at home. Guys, so in this workout, we're gonna cover all the major muscle groups in the lower body. So that's gonna include the quadriceps, the glutes, the hamstrings, the calves, and the anterior tibialis of the lower leg. We're gonna walk you through the technique for each one of the exercises in the programs. We're gonna lay out the full routine for you. In our other video on the upper body workout, we covered how to progress your workout, how to interpret the workout, and the schedule that you should work out on during this routine. So if you haven't seen that video yet, you're gonna wanna click here to take a look to get all that information so you'll know how to follow this program once you've learned how to do the exercises. So if you'd like to learn how, stick around, we're about to show you how. All right, everyone, the first exercise in our lower body routine is going to be for a muscle called the anterior tibialis, which is an often neglected muscle on the front of the shin. It is a decelerator whenever we're heel striking the ground. So when our foot hits the ground, if we're running or jumping, this muscle is what slows down the foot as it strikes the ground. And so this is a great exercise to tune up the anterior tibialis. It's going to help prevent shin splints, and it's actually going to help with our rebounding, jumping, running, anything like this as we improve the strength of this muscle. So it's very simple. We just need an empty space on a wall. Your hips are going to go against the wall. You're about 1 foot length or a little more away from the wall in terms of distance. Hips only, shoulders are off the wall. And then with the legs completely straight, we're just going to pull up the toes towards you, get a good squeeze at the top, and then a slow, controlled return to the floor. Toes up towards you. Slow, controlled descent. If we want to make this exercise more challenging, you simply just step a little further away, and it's going to increase the range of motion and increase the difficulty. If it's a little too difficult, we just work our way a little closer to the wall. We want to be mindful not to be letting the knees bend as we do this exercise. So we want to have the thighs completely squeezed and locked out, and we want to keep the upper body forward off the wall. Otherwise, it's a very simple and effective exercise to help warm up the lower leg before we get into our full strength training routine. The next exercise in a routine is going to be a calf raise, and we can do this as a single leg calf raise or a double leg calf raise depending on your current strength. I would always recommend, if you're beginning, to start with 2 legs, and we can always progress to the single leg version. All you're going to need is an aerobic step, or really any block that gets you about 4 to 6 inches off the ground. To set up, we're going to stand with your toes on your risers and your heels off the riser, and you're going to descend, allowing your heels to come down into a full stretch, making sure you're keeping the knees straight. Once you hit the bottom position, you're just going to push up as high as you can onto your tippy toes, and I really want to emphasize we want to get up as high as possible, descend slowly, get into a full stretch position at the bottom, and then lift back up. Guys, we leave a lot of potential on the table, and a lot of people cheat themselves out of results by not maximizing the range of motion as they do this exercise. So once again, if we're doing the double leg or the single leg version, you're gonna wanna make sure you descend into a full stretch, push up onto the tippy toe, get as high as you possibly can, and then descend slowly, making sure you're keeping your knees straight throughout the entire motion. One important thing to note is this is not a balance exercise. So feel free to set up close to a wall, a post, or a bench that you're able to hold onto for support in the non-working hand. And in the opposite hand, you can hold onto a dumbbell to add load so you can progress from workout to workout. This next exercise is the meat and potatoes of our program. It's the front foot elevated split squat with a heel lift. I'm going to demonstrate a couple reps of the movement, and then we're going to talk about why I like it so much and why we're using this front foot elevated version. So to perform the exercise, we want to have the heel on an elevated surface like a heel wedge, but this could also be anything that you can put your heel on that's a couple inches high, like a plate or something you've got lying around the house. A book would work just fine. As far as the step, we're using this aerobic step, but we could also be looking at any kind of block that's 4 to 6 inches off the ground that you can stabilize your foot on. We're going to take a long stride, so the rear foot is back in this lunge position. We're going to allow the back knee to bend, but we're focused on bringing the front knee forward and getting the calf muscle completely covered by the hamstring. We want the knee to be in full flexion and we want our hip to be below the height of our knee, allowing the back knee to bend towards the ground slightly, and then returning back up. Once again, with the other leg, we take a long stride. We're going to allow the back knee to bend slightly towards the floor as the front knee comes forward. You can see the knee is well out in front of the toe. The hip is below the knee, and the hamstring muscle is completely covering the calf muscle, and the upper body is in a vertically upright position. And then we return to the top. Now, the reason this is such an impactful exercise is because it hammers the quadriceps, the hamstrings, and the glutes on the front leg, while providing a massive stretch and strength challenge to the hip flexors and the adductors on the rear leg. So we get a ton of bang for our buck from a muscular strength perspective, but also from a mobility perspective. Now, the reason we're using the block is because most people don't have the prerequisite mobility in their hips to perform the full version of this exercise on the ground with good form. There's two major restrictions that would prevent us from performing this exercise, and that is going to be insufficient mobility at the ankle joint on the front leg and insufficient mobility in the hip of the rear trailing leg. So if we have the front ankle tight, it's going to prevent us from allowing the knee to come forward, and it's going to stop us from getting in the deep position and force us to descend in something like this kind of a position, or the heel will raise, which puts us in a slightly more vulnerable position. So the heel wedge bypasses the ankle mobility restriction and allows us to get into our full knee flexion and full hip flexion, which is the priority. Similarly, with the trail leg, if it's too tight to do this movement on the floor, we're going to see that the body's going to start to tip forward, or once again, we'll come up onto the toes because we can't keep this leg straight enough to get down deep. If we bend it to the floor, once again, the floor is going to restrict us from getting into full knee and hip flexion. So by raising the front foot, it allows us to drop down deep enough so that the back trailing knee doesn't hit the floor, but we still get the knee flexion and the hip flexion, which is once again our priority, and we can maintain an upright posture with our torso before we return. So these are the big points we want to focus on once again as we perform the exercise. The ear, the shoulders, and the hips maintain a vertical alignment. The front knee comes forward over the toe as the back knee drops to the ground until the hamstring covers the calf muscle, and then we return to our position. What you're going to want to watch out for, the common mistakes that I see on a regular basis are allowing the torso to fall forward as we descend. Once again, we want to stay in a vertical position. I also see a lot of people trying to keep the back leg perfectly straight, and it restricts them from getting into the correct position with the torso vertically aligned. So once again, allow the back knee to bend for now. That's why we have the block. And over time, like 6, 8, 12 weeks, you're going to notice by performing this exercise regularly, the hips are going to open up, and we're going to be able to slowly lower the height of the block closer and closer towards the ground. But it's going to take time. So stick with this exercise. You're going to notice massive improvements in hip mobility. You're going to notice massive improvements in the strength of your thighs. It's an absolute game changer, and in my opinion, the king of lower body exercises, particularly in a home gym. To load this exercise, we can hold a pair of dumbbells in either hand and perform the exercise exactly as described earlier. For the target number of reps and sets. If you're having trouble performing this exercise with your own body weight through a full range of motion, you can set yourself up close to a post or a bench, maybe a couch, something that you can use your hand for support. And over time, as you continue to work through the motion and you develop strength, you can eventually remove the post and use your own body weight. And then in more time, you can start to load with dumbbells as prescribed. Next up is the Romanian Deadlift. This is an excellent choice for training the muscles of the posterior chain, so largely your hamstrings, the glutes, and the spinal erectors through the low and mid back. This is going to develop hip extension, which functionally means you're going to have more power in sprinting, jumping, and any kind of motion that's going to require the hips to powerfully extend, which is almost any athletic endeavor. To perform this movement, we're going to take a pair of dumbbells, holding them at your side. We want to hinge back at the hips, so we're pushing the butt behind us as we allow the upper body to tip forward. You'll notice in this position, the arms, torso, and thighs make a triangle as they get into the bottom spot. So as we push the hips back and descend, the arms will stay close to the legs and the shins. We'll descend until we get roughly parallel to the ground or as low as you can go while maintaining a neutral spine position. We really want to make sure we avoid rounding the lower back as you descend. We want to keep the spine in a stable or neutral position and have all the movement occur at the hips. You'll notice the shins stay in a roughly vertical position. The knees are unlocked, but they are not moving forward. Other things we want to avoid are letting the weights drift out way in front of us. Once again, we want the arms to pull the weights back towards the legs. And we also want to avoid a squatting motion. Once again, this is predominantly a hinging movement at the hips, so we don't want to squat down with the weights. We want to push the hips back, keep the shins vertical, and keep the shoulders out in front of the feet with the weight evenly balanced over the middle of the foot. We progress this exercise simply by adding more weight over the weeks as we perform with exceptional technique. Our next exercise is a step down. So this is an exercise to train terminal knee extension and pelvic stability. So we're going to be on a riser. Once again, we should start on the lowest level, probably about 4 inches, and we can graduate up to 6 or 8 inches as you make progress over 6, 7, 8 weeks. We're going to want to use a heel wedge just like we did with the split squat. Again, this is going to bypass an ankle mobility restriction. That's going to give us an easier time performing the exercise and getting the target muscles to do their job properly and achieve the optimal technique. So this is really going after the quadriceps as well as the glute medius and the contralateral quadratus lumborum muscle, which is basically just a lower back muscle on the opposite side of the hip of the leg we're working. So we're going to start by standing on the block. The non-working leg is going to be kept straight, slightly in front of our block, and then we're just going to unlock the knee to descend, gently make contact with the heel, and then return up. At no point will we put weight on our non-working leg, so we're only gently touching the floor. It's very important to observe the tempo with this exercise, which is a slow, controlled descent, and then a controlled return to the top position. So with the other leg, so you can get a better view, the non-working leg is out in front of the block. The working leg is going to unlock and push straight forward. You'll notice the torso remains in a vertical posture, very similar to our split squat. The ear, the shoulder, and the hip maintain vertical alignment. In other words, we're not hinging back at the hip. This is not a hip hinging exercise. It's a knee hinging exercise meant to target the vastus medialis, one of the quadriceps muscles that is involved in terminal extension of the knee. Big errors we can make here, once again, are going into a hip hinge pattern. Not that it's dangerous or wrong, but it's not the target of this particular version of the exercise. So we want to avoid leaning forward and we want to avoid pushing the hips back. The other big thing is crashing down onto the ground and putting your weight down and performing reps quickly. This is all about control. So we want to make sure we move down slowly, make gentle contact with the ground, and return. The final error people often make is they reach for the floor with the non-working leg, and you can see how the hip shifts as we do that movement. Our goal is to maintain a level alignment of the pelvis, so the 2 points at the waistband should look level if you're looking at yourself in a mirror, rather than tipping as you go down. In terms of loading this exercise, just like the split squat, we can hold a dumbbell in either hand, and over the weeks of the program, you can slowly graduate your weights. So one hand, one dumbbell on either side of the body for this exercise. And just like our split squat, if you're having difficulty performing this exercise with your own body weight, you can begin by holding on to a post or your couch or some other implement for balance for the first several workouts. Once you develop the strength and control, we can progress to using your own body weight and then eventually start adding dumbbells as load for the exercise. All right, guys, we are going to round out the routine with the Sumo Dumbbell Deadlift. So we get the name from the wonderful sport of sumo wrestling in Japan. We're going to set up over a riser with a wide stance. How high the riser is going to depend on your current mobility and your height. So don't be shy to really get it up to a high height in the beginning. We can increase the range of motion over time as you get more comfortable in this position. But for many of you, it's probably going to be a little bit of a shock on the groin muscles. To set up, we're going to place the dumbbells on the riser directly between your legs. You're going to push the knees out to either side and try to sink down in a squatting motion until you're able to get a grip on the dumbbells, and then simply return to a standing position by extending at the knees. We want to avoid letting the knees collapse in. We want to make sure we're pushing those knees out to either side of the room, maintaining a relatively upright position as you squat down. Some hip hinge is going to occur here, and that's okay, but it's not a hip hinging predominant motion like our Romanian deadlift. We don't want to be tipping forward at the waist. We want to be thinking of squatting down. If you're getting the movement right, you're going to notice a big stretch in the groin, and this exercise is really going to target the glutes and the adductor muscles while getting a little bit of quad action as well. So it really rounds out the rest of the routine. Try it out. Make sure once again you're able to maintain a relatively upright position and get your knees out to either side of the room with a really wide stance, and the rest is going to take care of itself. Now that we know how to perform all the exercises in the routine, we want to take a look at the full routine as a whole. So here it is. Once again, if you want to understand how to read this routine and make progress over time, you're going to want to take a look at our free upper body dumbbell workout, which you can click right here to access that video. If you'd like to get a downloadable copy, you can download a PDF of these workouts right here. Please hit us in the comments if you have any questions about how to perform these exercises, or just to give us feedback about what you think of the workout. Also, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see us bring you more free content of how you can get in shape at home. That's all for today, everybody. See you next time.